So then the Gemara in Chagiga state Le'elam yim koironim skola shaloi vayikne na'alayim l'raglov. Man should sell everything he's got to make sure he's got shoes on his feet. Come to the class, they take some off.
Today is Hey Be'av Tafshin Samech Tes. We're in Hemshik Samech Tes from the Rishava on Ahmed Mem Vav. Today is Mem Hey.
You all remember both. Anyway. Alright, so we saw the Bekiya Sahar Zeisim Liosit Lovei. We saw the Mechetche Mizrocha B'Yoma. And we saw that meant that there was a split from east to west in the mountain. And the two Tzadim, Tzof and Vadorim, they moved each one to the other, more to its own side, as it were. And that left like a gorge or a open chasm in the middle, which went from east to west. And we saw that was the inyan of the Bechinas Ha'oirach me Mizrach Ma'amara. I think that's what we were holding, maybe a bit before. Huh? So we saw that Liosid V'nigle Kveid Havaya V'ro Kol Basar. But that's the pasuk in the coming Haftarah of Beis Hashem, which hopefully we read in the Beis Hamikdash. Pasha Nachamu ki Ro Kol Basar V'nigle Kveid Havaya V'ro Kol Basar ki Pi Hashem Dibers the Hemshech. At a pasuk, the Yeshi is Gala B'chinas Helem Ha'atzmi the Ein Seif Baruch Hu K'mash Kosu. Ya'asel Machakeloi. That's a pasuk in Yeshayahu Hanavi that the Eibush will literally do, and he will give a tremendously special Gilui Elakus to those who waited for him. Ya'asel Machakeloi. And we saw K'mosh Kosu B'drush the Yontav Shel Rosh Hashanah Reish Hamavav Ba'erach. We learned those Maimarim where they talk about the man the Daikinen B'milin the Chuchmasa. And we saw that was the Ribi Ha'iyun and the Ribi effort, and Yugiya Zeya shall effort in the Biru Halachas, B'derech Iyun and Pilpul Davke, with the whole Arichas that we had over there in some above, and that's called Laman the Daikinen B'milin the Chuchmasa, and that's how the Zohar teaches L'machakela, that he waits and he hesitates and deepens himself in every prat. Shabbatayra. And Davkali, they say, comes to the, as we saw, the Helem Ha'atzmi of Chochmah. So that's what he means here, that the Helem Ha'atzmi, the Ein Seif. But we saw that the Sheresh HaChochmah is in the Atzmi, Yesaya Chochmah V'Harotzen, Oineg V'Harotzen, Ki Yeh Hagilui Shalei B'chinas Tzimtzum V'Helem Klau. Because at that time, the Nagili will not be through Tzimtzum. The Helem, or that side to the Seder of Hishtaushel Elamez, or the Seder how it is now, but even Shal Limud, the Upana, Mi Madrege la Madrege, however, the Yosid, it'll be revealed, B'chol Madrege, the Shal Pnimis HaKeser, Mil Maila, Ad Lamata, Behashfoa, and it'll be Miskale in all the Nivroim, K'moy Shahein. Without them being batel b'matzias, but it'll be miskale in them. And we saw that was the yichud of the makif and the pnimi b'teich ha'kelim b'yachad. V'yesh ha'oma v'nivka ha'zeisim yichertshei mizrocha v'yoma. Da'ayinu b'chinas ha'oirech mi-mizroch l'marav. I think we learned this already. How far did we get down? Because we're already medactic that was the union of length. Ba'erach ha'mizrach ha'marav, v'shkosu v'zorach ha'shemesh uvo ha'shemesh. It's a pasuk in Kohelet that the sun literally shines forth. Uvo Hashemesh, and it goes down or descends, or literally comes. I mean, to be quite frank, the word vo is from Russian over, of coming. It comes down. Shezriches Hashemesh uba mizrach, the appearance and the shining out of the Shemesh is davke in what we call the east, mizrach. Ubiyosei b'marav, and it's going down, or it's approach, literally, from the moment it goes up, is towards the west. Dalachei nikra hamizrach kedem, or marav nikra ocher. Therefore we find in different lashonos in the Pesukim that the word kedem refers to mizrach. Kedem meaning primordial, or before, or prior to, from the word koidem. And therefore the word kedem refers to mizrach because that's where the appearance of the Shemesh is, but that's like the primary step of the sun is its appearance from Helem Gomer into Gilui is in Mizrach, and therefore we call that primary or primordial kedem. Or Marov, the Indian of the west, well, that's where the sun goes over towards the whole time moving and going in that direction. Well, that's called Ocher. Shehu B'chinas Reish V'Seif. In other words, the fact that the Shemesh has in itself kedem v'ocher, or the Indian of ocher is representative of the word achorayim, or exit or back. Yeah, the word achorayim is always taken as the rear section, or the hepech of the ponim, the hepech of the Indian of an appearance b'derech faith. Therefore, said the Rebbe, that's why we find that the sun's appearance is connected with the Indian of kedem, ve'ilu its disappearance is connected with the Indian of ocher. What that tends to indicate that one is, as it were, a higher madrega. One is like the beginning, and the other is like the end or the completion, or as you might call the losing of the Indian Agilui. Therefore, when the sun comes up, it's with a tremendous pomp of Gilui, on the contrary, and when it goes down, then it's also picturesque in a way, but the light is all going down and not coming up in a new iskala. Therefore, that Indian of the Tuikev at the beginning is called Kedem, and the Ilu, the Indian of the Shkia, that's called Ocher. So we see then that there's like what you might call a Rosh V'Sof. Where does Rosh V'Sof? Well, that's what we call Oirech, length. In other words, where there's a beginning that you can see and an end that is noticeable, that's called Rosh V'Sof. The Indian ha'Oirech hu b'chinas Yeridas ha'Shefa ha'Hashpolosoi migavoya l'nomo. In our particular case, the Indian of an Oirech means the descent of the divine revelation, the Indian of the Shefa. Eloki, how it goes from Gavoya Nomo. Now there's no place Lamaila, so what do we mean by Gavoya Nomo? We mean the Indian from Tuik of Agilui, elevation in Gilu Elakus, below Helem, or that's called Gavoya. Ve'ilu, the Indian of the Yerida from Madrega la Madrega, like we saw earlier, Derek Limud v'Upana, or that's the Indian of going downwards or into a lower state, or that's called Nomo. Yeah, Kemoi Churas Havav, like the shape of the letter Vav. Yeah, Shahila v'Nimshach Milmaila Lamata, Shemishkatzer Bahamsha. The way they make I think we had this also. Yeah. I think we went over this. Akamay Yeridas Ashpos Era Seicho Mea Mashpia Ela Makabel B'chinas Ha'Oirech Sheyesh Boi Reish V'Seif Dahainu Etchilas Am Shokosei Mina Mashpia Shemea Boi Era Seicho V'Yesa. When the Mashpia first begins to give the Seicho forth from himself in a way that will reach the Makabel, then it still has in itself all the what you might call the Ashiras and the richness and the profundity that it has by him. But as it goes down, then it's mismayed, because it's got to be received in the Ein Orech, Dike Kelim of the Makabel. Therefore, what that's called going downwards, from length, and that's the meaning of the Tchilas Hamshachos Mia Mashpia, Shemaya Ba'er Aseichel B'Yesa, Umiskatzer, Umismayet Ha'oyer. It gets literally shorter by way of limiting itself. Umislabish Bekama Levushim, and it enters different levushim which are already not the immediate seichel, they're not the etzem musag of the seichel, but they're like garments which make it possible for the Talmud to be mikabel. However, those garments involve a helem in the etzem, what you might call behirus of the seichel eishehu mitzad atzmei. And therefore he says those levushim are in the form of hatzoes u'misholim, shebohem misalem ha'oyer ad sheyuchol lehiskabel el hamikabel. But those levushim are what's called hatzoes. What hatzoes means, like suggestions or putting forward a way of showing how the seichel works. For example, that can be borrowing on comparisons with other inyanim that are known to the Talmud already, or drawing parallels with other concepts that he's already had. That's called hatzoes. And misholim is actually put it into a foreign entity altogether, which is not from the etzem haseichel, until we find that some misholim can be mamish dvorim gashmiyim, even though they're indicating the misholim of binyanim ruchnim v'nailim b'yetza. And therefore that's called a lavush. However, that lavush it causes a helem, albeit in the oil, but that's in order sheyuchal, that it should be possible lehiskabel el hamakabel, that the makabel, that he's ein orech to the Rav, he should be able to be makabel the etzem oil of that seichel. Olamaila, so the Rebbe said that's how it is in the moshel of the Rav mit the Talmud. So in other words, that the Rav has the inyan, even of what we call teikif al here and behirus al here, but in order to give it down into the makabel, then he begins with a higher gilui of the inyan, and then he gradually brings it down until it's able to enter even levushim b'hatzois u'misholim. In other words, both the hatzois and the misholim are different types of levushim, and through that it's able to be miskabel el ha-mikabel. Well, we see that the concept of a lavush is that it takes a dova naila and brings it down and embraces it, or is malbishit in such a way that it's able to come down to and be poil in a lower level. And that's like we find the lavushay hanefesh, that the nefesh in Tanya is the esa koiches of the nefesh, chachma bina das and the sheva midas. And we see that we have on them the Gimel Levushim, Machshava, Dibur, and Maisa. And as the Alter Rebbe is Mavaya in Perek Daled, in Tanya, that the function of those Levushim is that they bring down the koiches which are mufshotim. They're in Yonim Ruchnim, Lamadai. It brings them down in such a way that they're able to be poil in the world, and he's able to use the seichel in Yoneh Ha'elam Kipshutei, or that's only through the levushim of Machshava Diburu U'Maisa. So, albeit in the Nefesh Elokis, so those levushim are very high, they have a very high shurish, because they're so high, they're able to bring even the Inyanim of Torah into a lower Gilui. But however, Golui, Gabi de Makabel, they're in from levush. And that's the whole famous Maimah of the Rebbe in the Toshin Nunalev, when he spoke about the Inyan of Yericho and the whole Inyan of the spies of Yeshua, that they went in to Yericho, and it was the beginning of the kibush of Eretz Yisrael. He brings over there that the whole Inyan of the Ika HaKibush is Alidei Machshava Diburu Umaisa. And then he goes on to say that the whole Ikaveda of the Adam is Davka in the Ina from Lavushim, Davka. And that's the mile of the Lavushim that they bring in Yonim Shahai in aspect, but Davka, because they're high, they're not able to get into the Olam HaGashmi or be poiled in the Olam HaGashmi, and the Lavushim bring them down and make it possible for them to enter and be poiled in the Dvarim HaGashmi. And therefore we see that the Inyan from Lavushim is a tremendously broad Inyan in Pnimis HaTorah, even to the point that the famous Moshe of Shabbos Chazoin of Rabbi Leitzer Badicheva, as he compares the whole Beis HaMikdash to a lavush. He calls it a suit, a lavush. With the whole Inyan as one on, and he's got other mashalim. He brings another Moshe Beneger to Tkiyah Shofar and all sorts. So in the only way he likens the Ike Inyan to lavushim. And that's what we find, that B'kol HaInyonim, B'kol HaMadreges, and until it's brought down, it says that even the oil, which is Meir from the Eibishter, the oil HaRishon, but that's Me'ein HaMoyer, we say that's even for Yichud with the Moyer, nonetheless it's also called a Lavush. Of course, every Inyan which helps to come down, bring unity, El HaMekam is connected with the Inyan Lavushim down. So that was the Rebbe, those Inyonim of the Yerida, are not a Yerida just b'shvil ha-Yerida. The whole Yerida is for the sake of Lavushim, in order to bring it Davke to the Mekabel, and eventually the Mekabel then goes back Adar Boyin Shnin Koim Inish Adat Darabed, then he gets his Emes Asoga, and he's able to be Meshachid with the Mashpia and even Lamayla Mizeh. But that's the ultimate purpose of the whole thing. So how is it Lamayla? Or Lamayla is said, Hainu Amshocha Be'esesfirim. That the Ike is the Amshocha of Etzemelakus into the Inyan from Esesfirim. Ho'elyoina, the first Amshocha, is Mebchinas Achochma. It starts with the Inyan from Chochma. All I saw here fill in Chochma Stimoa, and it goes down Ad HaMalches. Shenikra Chochma Eloah Shenikroim Chochma Eloah Chochma Ta Torah. In other words, Chochma Eloah is Chochma Amish Ta Tzilas, Chochma Ta Torah is Malches. Chochma Bereish for Chochma Be-Sei. That's a famous lesson, Chochma Bereish for Chochma Be-Sei. That's a lesson in the Zohar Kodesh. It's not a pasuk. It's a lesson in the Zohar Kodesh, and it's interesting. That happens to be in which is a little bit nageya to Hayomim Ha'ele Shanachnu Nimtzoim B'Machshav. He brings over there the Inyan from interesting enough what we learned here earlier, that the two Yudin are the Chochma Bereish and Chochma B'Seif, the two Yudin of the Aleph. He said there's the Yud Shel Maila Be'Aleph and the Yud Shel Mata Be'Aleph, and then there's a Vav in the middle, what the Sedin and Amidus we learn. So the first Yud is Chochma Bereish and the second Yud is Chochma B'Seif, and then he goes on in the Zohar Kodesh to be Mazbeh that that's Chochma and the Malachis, and then he goes on to say it's connected also with the two and he covered the two luches, habriz. There were two luches habriz, and they were dealing with Chochma Bereish and Chochma B'Seif. And he writes, and it's brought down that the breaking of the lavushim, the breaking of the luches by Moshe Rabbeinu, albeit the Eibishter said it was the right thing that you did, but he says that breaking of the luches is what caused the breaking of the two Bate Mikdash. That's why the two Bate Mikdash were destroyed with a whole ganze riches in the Zohar Kodesh over there. When you get to Chochma Bereish and Chochma B'Seif. In other words, it's of course in the Inyan from the Yud HaTachtein. After in the Inyonim Haraya B'Chidat Tefillah Ad Lamata Mata, feel the luchis are broken. One in Nitzlano, but Davke Alidei says the Aliyah Miha Matzav, we learned in some above. Arichas, what he brought over there, that it had Moshe Rabbeinu not broken. The luchas Harashenis, then it would have been the whole even Habira, the whole Inyan of Limud HaTorah, but even Achar Lagamre, the whole, and then he brought the connection with Moshe Rabbeinu having hit the stone instead of spoken to it, which is also shot to the parshas that we've been learning in these times, albeit not mamish in this particular time, but in Parsha Chukas. So that's the union of the Chochmah Baroshu, Chochmah B'Asei. So the Rebbe says that's the union of Chochmah and Malchus. Now, why is Malchus called Chochmah Tatoah? Well, that's an interesting one. And that is, we see that there are two madrigas B'Klal in Chochmah. There's what we call Chochmah Satoiro, and then there's what we call Chochmah D'Maisa Bereshis. Kaviochel is the Chochmah that they used to put into Torah, that's Pinimius Chochmah, I'd say. This is Iker Gilui Chochmah, I'd say. Yeah, and then we see there's the Kaviochel, the unbelievable plan and the unbelievable Chochmah that there is in the whole Brio. And that's called the Chochmah D'Maisa Bereshis. Kaviochel, that's the Chochmah, how it is in Etzema Chochmah, Chochmah Satoira, where Aisha me Chochmah Nafkis, and then there's the Inyan for Chochmah, the Maisa Bereshis, would be eager through the Inyan Amalchus, the Achilles, which one on that is the Mahava of the whole Seder, Bereshis, and that's the Inyan of the Oisias, and Davki in those Oisias is Mishkala, that Chochmah of Maisa the Chochmah, the Maisa Bereshis, albeit they're a Chof Beis Oisias, and they are Mushish in Chochmah Satorah, as the one that so-called everything is through the Inyan for Torah of a Begolui, and therefore we see the Chochmah Tatoah Malchus, or that's called in Tanya Yira Tatoah. The altar there was two forms of Yira Eloah and Yira Tatoah, and one is at one extremity and the other is at the other extremity. Yira Eloah is Chochmah and Yira Tatoah is Malchus, and the reason being that even though Malchus is much lower, of the beetle in Malchus is much greater, because that's a beetle to the etzem kavona of the Eibishter to bring about the Elamah Atachtin, or the Elamois Atachtin in Davke. That's the inyan of the beetle of the Eved and the beetle of Kabbalah Soyo. So when a mensch is in a inyan from Kabbalah Soyo, and he's given away to the Eibishter a beetle, Gomo, and that means to all inyanim of Elakus, he's given away the beetle, called Nafshe, or he's Makabel in Emerson of Chochmah Eloah, even though he's down in Chochmah, he's down in Malchus, and therefore it's called Chochmah Tatoah Mitzadin and Abitul. Yeah, so he says the Baham Shachosai Mipchins Chochmah Labina. And so now on its way down through the Esesphere, we said at the Moshel of the Mashpia to the Makabel is an Atzilus that goes from Chochmah down into Chochmah Tatoah, and in the way of its Amshoch it goes from Chochmah Labina, Mebina Le Zo, and Mebina Le Zo, Miskatze, Mismayet Ha'oyer, Chulo. And then eventually it goes down from Zo into Malchus. Gam Yesh Bezeh Parsois Hamabdilis, there's also Parsois in the Amshocha between Bina Lazo, for example, there's what's called a parsa. And therefore he says that these parsois are mabdilois. They separate and they sort of make almost like a blockage from one level to the other. Ukamoi harokia shal gabi roshe hachayes. Like the rokia, which is stretched out, the firmament which is literally stretched out over the heads of the Chayas HaKodesh. But that's brought down in the Nevuah of Yechezkel Hanavi, that when he saw the Chayas HaKodesh, he saw the Rakia, Ke'ein Kirach, Hanoirosh Al Rosh HaChayas. He saw like, how they call it, a Kirach, like a huge sheet of ice, as it were. That's the way it appeared in the Moshel upon him, over the heads of the Chayas. Ukenoida as well, until the earth will go down and it can be received in Malchus, Liyais Hagilui B'Biyah, and that makes possible the Gilui into Biyah, B'Bchinas Ha'ora Niv Delis Levad, or the Gilui into Malchus causes that there can be then a what we call a ha'oraniv. In other words, it can be so metzumtzum and so altered by the parsoid and so altered by the helm of malchus that it appears to be like a dover nivdo me'alakus. Therefore, you can get yesh mina ayin of drawing that they feel themselves to be a metziyah. That's the inyan of a ha'oraniv nivdo. So, of course, that's only a dimiyan bavad. It's not a ha'oraniv. But it appears to them kaval as if he's kilo nivdal and he's living with a inyan which is given to him b'derech havdorah. So it just needs to be understood just for a second. What is that inyan of this parshas? And he brings a moshe from the Rakiya Shal Gabi Roshei Achayis, and he calls it Kerach Hanoiro. It's called over there in the Novi. So I mean, I expected everybody would shoot up their hands, but quite noticeable we one or two are sort of busy in a dignified way chopping shlofs, or people doing other in Yon and the Kilbim is born in Avir, but even though Avir is a if you put so in of Chitzonius as a man at Avir, as a all the hands should have shot up that the Chayes are kodesh there in Elamah Abri, or even in Elamah Yetzirah. And here we're talking about the Amshacha through the Essence Spirit into Malchus. We're talking in Atzillah. And the Chayas are much lower down. And that whole inyan of the Rakiya that Yecheskel saw, well, that's a Rakiya which brought in more protestic places in Chassidus, that's, Ainin in Elamah Bria, or even in Elamah Yetzirah, the Gavid Chayas. Now we come to say in the middle, the Al-Gabi Roshei Achayis in the Mitnatzila. So unless you say that they're very, very high, isn't it? You should know the fingers like that, my sham. I'm not sure if that's the way you should be holding yourself in a sort of shield, but you should know the fingers that way. It's I beg your pardon, I'm pleased to notice that all of a sudden there's an Indian from Badicha Daite, had it good. His mind is lit up with good humor. That helps with the Indian from Asoga Sater. So, ask Sultan Shaila, what has this got to do here? What's it doing? Elim came will say that way up in Atzilus, a tremendously high Malachim that they call also Chayes. And from Bina Lazor, Bina Lazor means L'cher in Atzilus. So we have to say, B'derech Efshem, and the ins got to appear in iron paste, but to my chagrin, that volume of iron paste is missing from my office. I don't know where is it this whole area around here or whatever happened to it. But all of a sudden I noticed that particular volume of the iron paste is missing. However, Mashi Yesh Lima was there.
I think I have it.
Yeah, is it Chelik Beis? Not Chelik Al, Chelik Beis. Well, if you think you got it, then you have to bring Makshova into Divo and into Maisa, and you have to give it to me to examine. Maybe it's mine. Anyway, Lafiza would suggest that the Nakuda is that Olam HaTzilas is the Mokeh HaKloli of all the Olamas Piyah. When I say the Mokeh HaKloli, that Atzilus is the Mamutza. And Daki Alidei Olam HaTzilas, all the other Olamas come about. However, all the different Madrigas that are in Olam HaTzilas all appear B'Pratias in Biyah. However, the Klolos of Atzilus is Chokhmah. And the Indian of Bria is Bina, Yetzirah is Zor, and the Asiya is Malchus. Which means, what happens is that the Protei Madrigas, how they were in Atzilus, all go down and express themselves in Biyah. Whatever we find in Biyah, that they're Chayas, and what are those Chayas? They're Midas. The Chayas, they're Ika Avedas, are Alidei Midas, and over their heads, Kaviyochu, is Nimtach Akerach, what Akerach indicates water, which has gone into a solidification. How do you call it? The ice is solidified water, which means that something that's become a hasoga means that the water is solidified and it's not going to move either way, meaning that it's already reached its musag, and it's maskona, and it's going down in a way that's going to be musag. It's going to be understood. And that's the inyan of going down to the highest, because their avoid is to be masig inyan.
If Bia is the pratis of Atzilus, and you said Bria is Das, or is Bina.
Right, so where's Chokhmah? Yeah, so the inyan of Chokhmah is there's a certain presence of Atzilus in Bria. That's in Gan Eden Ha'elyon, or Gan Eden Ha'elyon Bika. Gan Eden Ha'tatan is in Yetzirah, and according to the Alter Rebbe in Kutiter in a place, Gan Eden Ha'tatan is also in Asiya, in Elam Asiya. From that we see that there's certain traces of Chokhmah. Because what's the inyan from Gan Eden, Atzilus, how it's meir, Derek Malchus al Chaponim, into Olamas Bria Yitzirah. So there is a certain trace of Chokhmah in all the three Olamas, Lafizeh. Although each one of them becomes a inyan proti le'atzma. And so therefore, the inyan from Kerach is hasoga, things that are understood already in an immovable way, as it might say. It's already become clear that that's a maskana. The highest, what they're in is midas, or they gain their whole midas, Lamaila, through understanding Elakusa. It's come down in the form of a clear hasoga to them. So the shorish of that in Atzilas is that there's a parsa between Binala and Zoh. What in Atzilas, it's a very delicate parsa. But nonetheless, the same principle applies. That in order to get a midah in Atzilus, which means a midah already, like Chesed or Gevura, you've got to have a soga kaviyohom. There has to be a gilu of a certain hasoga, which is called a kerach. The gavi hadi inyonima in etzem mabina, or in etzem machochma b'vadai. That is a shura. Therefore, the Rebbe says that rakia shall gavi roshi achayis really exists in Atzilah. It's just that there it's in its klolistic, how do you call it, dogmatic form, and later it comes out more proteus in Bria ve'afilu Yatir and Miyudeh afilu into certain aspects of a seer. So there was those parsois exist in a very delicate even in Atzilus, and they come down into the union of Elamus Bia. However, in Atzilus, that makes it eventually possible that the Yor should be Miskabel B'Malchus, Liyais Agilui B'Bi Bia, in order there should be the Gilui into Bia. What do we mean here? Gilui B'Chinas Aron Nivdel, canal. So now he puts in brackets, V'chein hu b'klolos am shochas hakav, shu b'tzuras vov, shemiskatzer u'mismayet u'misaleim. So he says, so it is with the klolos am shochas hakav, that the whole of Atzilus is am shochas hakav kiyadua. According to the Kabbalah and to Chassidus, Ike hakav is mistayim by Malchus Atzilus. Afterwards, you have only a ha'ora da'ora of the kav, come over in Geras HaKodesh in time. So, I mean, you have a certain gila of the kav b'chol elements. But the kav per se completes itself in Malchus. And therefore, the whole kavon, the whole amshocha, from Chokhmah B'Roish into Chokhmah Shebasei, is like a tzura of a...
We said that Rekia was Bina, right?
It's a form of Bina. So, it's in Bina Gufa, it's what we call Chitonius Bina.
Right. And you said that was on top of the Chayes.
Right.
And if the Chayes are in Bria, and Bria is Bina, so how can you say the Bina of Chitonius Bina on top of Bina?
That's what I pointed out. The Chayes Bemas are in Yetzirah. Alam Bria is Beklal from Bina. So they gain a certain gila from Bina into Yetzirah through the union from Malchus to Brio, and that's the Keren, Hanura of Gabi Rosheya. But the Ike Shurish that is in Bina.
Is there any malachim that are in Atzilus, however? Is there any malachim which are in Atzilus?
Oh, that's a good question. Are there any malachim in Atzilus? So it appears that there are. Yeah, it appears, but only in what we call the Heicholos of Atzilus. And there's a lesson in Tanya. I'll just have to be mine, mamish. At this regard, it's jumped out of my mind, but there's a lotion in Tanya where the Alter Rebbe says, Malachim Elyonim Ba'atzilas. I think it's in that famous, I'll have to look it up in the Samech Tes. I think it's in the famous, I think it's in the famous Igeras HaKodesh, chapter 20, over there, or in Kontra. I'll do it later. I don't like doing things like that in the middle of a class. I'll do it later when I have Yeshiva Das. There should be a Lashon in Tanya where the Alter Rebbe says, Malachim al-Yoinim Shabbat Tzilas. Kimat Bora. I don't like putting myself unless I know what I'm saying. I don't want to say it. But Ein Ochanami. Aber Malachim and Atzilas are only in what's called the Heicholas of Atzilas. They don't really belong in Atzilas, as it were. They're like slightly outside of Atzilas. But they're in the close Amadrega of Atzilas. The truth of the matter is that the Malachim Mafilu in Bria also, the truth of the matter is. Yeah. But not in the same way and how it is in Atzilas. And therefore, says the Rebbe, it comes out of his hair that the close Hamshach is a kav, is in the form of a vav, and therefore it's misale and miskatzer. The whole there, who actual. Oh, this is in the present situation nowadays. Sheish Bechinas Reish V'Sei. You got madregas in every olam which are Reish V'Sei. Liyesh Sha'if and Am Shocher Hu Alidei Tzimtzum. Shezeu in Yud Shebereish Avo. Shemeira Ala Tzimtzum. What's well known, as we pointed out on numerous occasions already, despite the milah of the Yud, but it indicates a Kabbalah from the Atzmius, a Chochma Ayin Timotei, or it's a Nakuda. It's also, like we saw the two Madregas in Nakuda, at the Indian of Chochma is a Nakuda, and the far the Indian of Chochma indicates the Indian of Tzimtzum, Legavi the Madrega ho, Amitius, a Lamaila Mimel, a Chochma may Ayin Timotei, because so Indian of Ayin. Therefore, despite the mila of Chochmah, Sokosov, Ike Inyon, for our purposes here, is that it's a Tzimtzum. Shezei Inyan Ayud Shebarosha, Havov, Shemoira Ala Tzimtzum. Umamela, Am Shoches Havov, Hu Gamkein Alidei Tzimtzum Ve'elem. That since the whole beginning of the Vav is a Inyan for Tzimtzum, the Gavi De'er Harochov Shalamayla, therefore the whole Hamshocha itself is determined by how it begins. How to say that everything goes after the Ikra, and the Ikra being a infant Tzimtzum, like Gabi the Madregas Akoid Meis, therefore everything that's Nimshach from that goes with that general principle of Mismayat, of Mistamteim, from level to level. So the Rebbe said, V'reishis Asibo, the beginning of the reason for that, Reishis Asibo. And we see that the Indian of Siba is brought down in many places in Siddhas. Asibo is a reason for something, but it's not necessarily a Indian which is beslabshus in that Indian. It's like a moved out, but if that won't be functioning the way it does, then you wouldn't necessarily, or you wouldn't have the Indian which comes out of it. In other words, it's a cause, but it's not necessarily ilava all of it. It's like it's a distant power which makes that thing possible. So that means that Sof they have a shaykhs, but not necessarily an intimate shaykhs. And ever says the Rebbe, Reishis Hasibo, like a word, the Indian at the beginning and the whole reason for that is he mipnei shesherash am shocher hu rak mivinas koyach atzaymer shebe elyoin mamela tzolik liz am shocher alidei tzimtzum v'kav kota. The Rebbe said that since it all began in Chochmas Timor from Keser, and we said the Amshocha from Pnimis HaKeser was Davki Alidei Koyach HaTzamech Sheboy, and that was the Indian which led to the parcel between Keser and Chochmas Timor. That's where it all begins. We said that was because it wasn't the Etzim HaKeser, but only from the Koyach HaTzamech Sheboy. Like we see in the Oret, that the Koyach HaTzamech is only a Ha'ora Mitzum Tzemes, the Gabi the Amitis in the Daimim. Remember, we had the whole Aritas about that. Therefore, says the Rebbe, that's the Sibba. Why is it called a sibber, because the inyan and how it is in Atik, the inyan for Koyach HaTzameach, Shabbatik, doesn't really come to the valve how it is going down from Zohar into Malchus, or from Malchus into Bria, or Cha'itza, and that's what's called a inyan Ruchoicha Mihem. Oh, but that's the fact that functioned in that way, well, that's what makes it possible, and that's what leads to the fact that that's how it is, B'chol HaDerech. Just like we said, that because it begins in Chochmah, and that's the way it goes all the way down. Similarly, the ratios of the whole inyan were because it began in a madrega which was only a ha'ora b'legabi the mokeh, what that's the inyan of the Koyach HaTzameach. Avoli Yosid. However, when it will come to the Zman of Moshiach, Kishi Yivoka Har Hazaisim. That's legabi what he brought in the brackets. That's the etzem hadoimim, but that's she'im be'erech legabi the Koyach HaTzameach, as we saw. Kishi Yivoka Har Hazaisim. She is galabchinas ha'ayin ha'atzmi the kesa mamish, not the Koyach HaTzameach shaboy, not a very atzmi's madrega of kesa. Oz tia, no pnimis atik. Oz tia bekia mimizrach la lamarav. Then it will be an oivan oirech b'chinas reishva say. In other words, it will take a B in the same area where it was bo'irech. In other words, from Reish, say from Chochmah Ilah into Chochmah Torah. V'hainu, however, what is the difference? She'yeh gilui mibchinas Chochmah Ilah ad b'chinas Chochmah Torah b'shoveh equally. Lo yeh chiluk the Reish v'seiv klal. There won't be any more the whole concept of Chochmah b'Reish v'Chochmah b'seiv, because there won't be any Reish and save. No, it'll be miskara and even will literally the whole urirach will not be in the form of a vov, a kotzer, but the whole area will be full of the gile of pnimis akesa, the hainu achmi and say for all of our purposes. And that's the inyan, that there'll be a open gorge, an open split between the mountain Mizrach Lamara, but that's the inyan van Reishva, the inyan van Oirech, in a way that it'll be completely taken over by Pnimis ve'atzmias Ein Seif. And what does that mean for our purposes? That there won't be any difference or separation between Reish v'Seif Klal. That means shebechinas ha'atzmi mamish. In Pnimis Atik, Yumshach v'yizgale b'chol ha'atzilas v'gamba bi ad lamata mato mamish. In other words, everything will be just one huge, what you might call similarity of Gilev say b'li kol ha'inyan from limud v'upan, like we saw from one level to the other, derech parsa and derech yerida, but mamish. Everything will be full, but even shower from Giloi Pnimius Akesa, right down here in the Elama, Ataktin Adlamata Mata Mamish, or Kamoi Giloi Hanavua, I brought the Dugma earlier, of Giloi Hanavua, Shii Elamata, Al Kol Echave, the Giloi will be shy to everybody, and we saw a fill of Le'yolodi man, and Yolodes, to everybody, B'shover, Achamesha Kosu, V'eshpoich Ruchi Al Kol Bosa Canal, as we've touched the Posik in Yoel, the V'eshpoich Ruchi Al Kol Bosa, V'yinabu, V'nibu, B'nei Sechem, B'neichem, B'nei Sechem, and your children literally will speak Navua. Yeshleima, says the Rebbe, why does the novice say V'eshpoich Es Ruchi Al Kol Bosa? V'geleh Ruchi, how do you do it? V'eshlach Navua Al Kol Bosa, was it Eshpoich? I will pour out. The Yeshleima, the inyan hashvicha, u'b'chinas ribui v'toikev, b'lishum tzimtzum v'helem. When a man pours something, he just takes it in the kelim, without hesitation, without reckoning with any limitations. He just pours, and causes the whole inyan just to flow with a tremendous takeoff. So that's how the whole inyan of an Ein Seif is going to reach yeah, Lamata, even into the, what you might call the Kalim, how they are, yeah, in Olam HaGashmi Lamata, even the Kalim of Yelodim V'Yelodeh. I had heard of it, that's the union of the split in the Ham in Mizrach la Ma'arav. What's with the union of the other two halves of the Ha, yeah, the north and the south? Are they going to go and move, as it were, more to the, they're going to move from either side, they're going to move backwards or forwards, yeah, from either side of the split in the middle. So what is that? So here's an interesting one. The Rebbe says, "Omashu kosev chotzi ha'or tzafeina, v'chotzi ha'or negbo." That half will move to the north and half move to the south on either side of the split that we've now got. Like he says, there'll be a gay, God, there'll be emtar. So he says, the tzofin v'dorim, the north and south, aim a base kavim, the chesedu ugvura, as the one on, that tzofin is the yin from chesed, the gvura, as it brought down, the pasuk in Tilim, which says tzofin v'yomin ata borosom. What yomin is the yin of chesed kiyadua. So if you said tzofin v'yomin ata borosom, you created between the right, and so tzofin means the yin of left, but tzofin means the north. So that means that tzofin is connected with the gvuret. And we also see in the Mishnah, a little bit of it was based on Bechira, we say in the Mishnah, we say every day in Davening, that Kodshei Kedoshim, Shchitoson be tzofin. But the yin of Shchita, well, that's a yin from gvuret. That's a gilui ha'gvuret, so that had to be dafki be tzad tzofin. Of the Mizbeach, what tzofin is indicative, the Indian Hagura is Tavkir. And therefore, Tzofin is Gura and Dorim is Chesed. But therefore we find that the passage of the sun, that goes up but it sort of goes around through the south. And passes around through the south and goes over. In other words, it leans in a passage towards the south. And therefore the south is always in the middle of the days, particularly in the winter. In the summer, it's much higher. So therefore, it's hot everywhere, no matter what side you're on. In the winter, the sun goes down very much to the south. And over you get all the sun and the warmth in the winter days comes from the Tzad Hadorim. And therefore the union of Dorim is connected with warmth, or that's the union of Chesed. Ukamavur, in Havi Makemis considers that the Tzad Dorim is Dafki Tzad Chesed. Ilu Tzafon, yeah, like it's brought down, Rachman Tzlan. In the Pasuk, it's brought that Mitzofen Tiposach Chara, Rachman in Tzlan, that the evil will come Dafki from the north. Well, that was even from Bovel and from all the Malchi Bovel, but that's what Yirmiyahu and Novi warned them, that there would be the advance of Bovel onto the Beis HaMikdash, Rachmanim and Tlan. But that's also got a shot with the Yomim Shanonim Toim by him. Being as it is, the Hemshech Bayotzat, the Rizal, then we have already the Tikkun, but that's the Yinif and Afotzes. Amayonas Chutzah, the Yinif and Pnimis HaTorah, and Bafat, the Yinif and Avos Yisrael, was the one on the famous story that occurred with the Talmidei Arizal, with that Pashtas, Al-Chaponim, brought to his Istalchus from the world. It was a Heipach HaAchtas, a Heipach HaAva, as it brought down in the famous Sippur, was saying, Kanamochim Akshav, Laharik Vizek, because everybody doubtless knows the story. You guys know familiar with the story? You guys don't know the Mass, it's a shame. So anyway, hopefully we'll still reach a certain point before the end of the class. That's going on at the Arizal, had a whole group of Talmidim, even though it only been a very, very short time in Tzfas in time, is that they formed like a little Shikon Chabad. They formed in Tzfas. Either they built or they bought out a whole sort of a little area that all the Talmidim and their families would live together in the same general area, like the same Shikun, and it would be easier to make contact with the Arizal, and he would be able to have a Hashkocha and Kulam B'Yachad v'Chulam. So the Arizal warned them that if they're opening such a thing, that they must always be be'avu ba'achtas, and must never be any, machloikis or chelukei deyas or heipach ava, because that would interfere with the union of Gilui Pnimis Atera. Gilui Pnimis Atera has to have the union of achtas and ava davka. In the 9 days of that particular year, Chmonin Klan, after Rosh Chodesh, they came and they wanted that they should reveal to them a sword from the Zoya, a very, very difficult passage in the Zoya, and he said he doesn't have the reshut to be Megala that right now. So they were Menadned and they were Mavakish and Mishchanen, that he should reveal to them what is the Biur and the Pshat Amiti in that Indian of the Zoya, which up to now hadn't been known. He said, all right, I'm prepared to do it after a lot of... he said, but you must be tremendously careful for the next period of time, because that's going to come Begillah into the world for the first time, that there must be between you, there must be absolute Av of Achtas. Shouldn't Chas v'Shalom be any pagam in Av v'Sisol or Achtas Sisol amongst you Talmidim. So, they all promised in a hin and a hat. So the Arizal revealed to them, that sword. And then a couple of days later, in the 9 days already, some of the wives, some of the women had a bit of a quarrel. And one of the husbands, or a couple of the husbands, instead of letting them just go, forget about it, just make nothing of it, one of them supported his wife, and he said something COVID to the other member of the Talmidei Arizal. And so they answered one another sharp. And the Arizal came in that night. He came into the shul, and he didn't sit in his usual place. He went somewhere on the side, and he was all, he had a very dark look on his face. He didn't speak with anybody. He sort of covered his face. So they came over and said, Rabbi, what's happened? What's going on? Why don't you sit in here in all place? He said, I already warned you. I told you. And he said, it's not good, the matter. And the day after he passed away, that night it was already very bad. And the day after he passed away was, hey, Menachem. In other words, at Begolui, the whole Inif and the Stalchus Arizal was because of lack of balance. So we have to learn from a very, very deep limud. We've got to realize that without Ahavas Yisrael, without Achtus Yisrael, we can't really expect these scholars of the Rebbe. We can't really expect that the whole sheet. I mean, it's mamish there. The Rebbe said, the Hechst, the Zeit, it's the sea. It's all there. And something is holding it up. Something just keeps, preventing it actually being scattered. So that's the clock is there. I know the clock's also there. Just don't have to worry. Whatever. So therefore says the Rebbe that that's the union of Chotzi Aha, Tzofein of Chotzi Aha, Negba, the Tzofen Udvorim Haim Chesed Gvura, Uleyoshi Diyesh Kalulus Beis HaKavim, that there'll be the joining together of both of them, in a Zarifan, that they'll just be mashpia one to the other, and that'll be Ayin Korov to Ayin Tiferet. In other words, Agili ain't Seifi. But that doesn't quite, give a beer to why they separated out. They separated off more than what they were originally. The Tzofin went Tzofin, and the Dorim went Dorim. So that was the Rebbe. Another pshat, she bitla kavin. There won't be the kavin there won't be the kavin anymore. Uki-inyan, like it's brought down in the Zohar Kodesh, lay smaller bahaya atika. You guys heard of that one that in Pnimis Atik, there's no kavures. Lay smaller bahaya atika. There's no small tohi, tachlis ha-chesed ha-yumin. We talk about Gvuris to Atik. Of those Gvuris, how they are in Atik, are really Tachlis HaChesed. And there was the whole beer in Chesed. There's no Gvura in the Shurash of everything. There's no Gvura. It's all giving. It's all just that the Eibusha wants to give. Lay smaller by ticket. So I said that's the pshat that they moved away. Yeah, that's a little bit easier to fit into the marshal. That the two stadim, Tzofin, Dorim, yeah, they moved out of the picture, as it were. That moved more out of the way, and that moved more out of the way. Yeah, that indicates that they, as it were, lost their whole identity as Tzofin were Dorim, and there was only left a Gilui, a Pnimius, Atik, where there's no Gevulis, and there's no Inyan of Heipucha Chesed, Chas v'Sholem anymore. V'ainu shelo yeh, Bechinas Yischalfus Madreges, the Bechinas Helem Gilui. There won't be any more, the whole concept of Helem Gilui. Where are we? David is having Gilui. Shazei Beisa Kavin. What Helem Gilui, that's the two Kavim of Tzofin v'Dore. Akamoy, Ein Seif, Lamaila Ad Ein Kait, Lamata Mata Ad Ein Tachlis. Shazo Beisa Kavin, Sheba Ein Seif, Baruchu, Liyesh Bechinas Helem Gilui. Tzimtzum is Pashtas. Shekol Zeh Shayr Rak Boiven Am Shocha Diachsho. Avli Yosid is Batlu Bechinas HaKavim. That they will become Botel, and Ki Yeh Bechinas Gilui Ha'atzmas Beklos Ishtaushel Bishove. It'll all be equal. That's that whole statement is a famous. The whole Sum of Love after a certain point is based on that statement. Ein Seif Lamaila Adein Kate Lamata Mata Adein Tachlis, and the Rebbe brings it in the famous hemshech of Basi Lagani. I don't know if you ever guys learned in the letter of Maimorim and the hemshech of Basi Lagani. Not just the first Maimorim, but in the letter of Maimorim, the Rebbe brings over there that famous statement. It's not even clear exactly what is the lashon, what is the mokeh of that statement. They connect it with a Tikkun Zoya, but if I'm not mistaken, the lashon and Tikkun Zoya is also slightly different. Oh, anyway, Ein Seif, Lamaila Ein Kate indicates the inyan of Tzimtzum v'Helem, going up and up and up, as it were, into the mokeh of sure the Amshocha Lamaila, the scholars of the earth B'Toich HaMoya. But that's the inyan from Helem. And it's brought down in Basi Lagani, that's what's called the Makif Avoyer Choizer. That's a very high Makif, which just goes back into the Mokeh. Ve'ilu Lamata Mata Ad Ein Tachlis, well that's even when you read this Avoyer Lamata, or that's only Eish Pashtas, Lagabi Dimitis, Avoyer which is Kol V'Nikol, in the Moya, that's only Eish Pashtas Avoyer. Abel Chaponim, it's also Ad Ein Seif. Therefore, that's the lashon for Lamata Mata Adein Tachlis. But the difference between Lamaila Adein Seif and Lamata Mata Adein Tachlis, so that's a whole beer. Why over there Adein Seif and here it says Adein Tachlis? Well, that's Adein was needs a beer, but ain't kind of mochim lekanes there. Suffice it to say that that's a two oifanim. The Lamaila Lamaila Adein Kate, we have not in Kate, that that's indicative how the Ur goes back and is mitamtem v'nelam, not mitamtem, I'm sorry. It's uila v'nikla v'nelam in the moker, v'ila the iniva yerida ad lamata mata, or that's called the inyan of Gilui. I said, the Rebbe, that's the two ionim, Atzmi, Melakus of Helem B'toich Atzmi, or Gilui B'toich Hispashter. And the Rebbe, that Leosid Lover is going to become Botel. And the whole Hezbollah, that inyan is going to really not be applicable, Leosid Kokach, because those two inyonim of Helem, Maila and Gilui Lamata Mata are not going to be Shaykh anymore, but it's going to be just Gilui Lamata, everything B'Shove. For who in his Chabras there, Machiva Pinim Kanal, it's all going to be in the Kalim with the Makablim. And then what's going to be the Machiva, the Pinimi, all going to be in a state of his Chabras per Yachad. Benim to move on Mikora now. Da Gilui Kamoishu Aksho Ba'Tzilus. הוא גם כן מבחינת האור לבד, שנמשך על ידי צמצום בהלם הפרסה. The other words comes from the koyach hatzimach בלבד, שבקסר, and there was in von צמצום בהלם, and that's a ha'ora which comes through the parsa. Achu b'chinas mamutza, until Elam Atzilus becomes only a mamutza. Shal yidei Atzilus yuchol liyes yisavas bria yitzira vasiyah, u'shiyih agiloi lebiyah. The first of all, there'll be the inif and yisavas through Malchus, and then however much gilui into biyah is shaykh, there will be a gilui. Like we saw in Gan Eden, there's a higher gilui of Atzilus, and then the other giluim go down lefi erkom into bria yitzira asiyah. However, he said that's all through the Seder, that Atzilus is only a mamutza. In other words, it begins in the high level, and it goes down through all the different Yeridas into Chokhmah Tator, Malchus, and then it gives over, however much is Shaykh, into the Gimel Olamas. However, Ulazais, Bechinas Atzilus, Adayim Bechlal, Bechinas Das Takt. And this goes right back to where we started off the whole beer, that Atzilus is really the union of Das Taktoin. Because Atzilus is only a mamutza, albeit it's Lamailami Das Taktoin in a way. But it's a mamutza in order to bring to Das Taktoin. Therefore, Be'ike it Shaykh to Das Taktoin, Bechinas Ayin Shalayesh Hanivra, meaning the ayin of the Yes, in other words, it's ayin legabi him, but it has a shaykhus to him. Sheyesh lezeh shaykhus adayim b'chinas hayesh debriya yitzirava asiyah. B'chinas ha'ayin shal hayesh amiti, that ayin, that uyir atzmi, which is mizgala, and it's only a gile of the yesh amini, amiti, hu b'chinas ha'keser shal hamayla me'atzilus. That's the union of keser, how it's l'mayla me'atzil. Not the union from keser, how it's a mocker of upon him to chokhmah, at least by even shal me'ayin timotzei. But that's a b'chinas tzoymeach sheba keser, but that's a dimitis union from pinimis keser, and that is the yesh, that is the ayin of the yeshua amiti.
How can it, I mean, it just says clearly in an earlier mimer that Atzilus is Das Elyon.
No, that was when if we talk like everything in Nevroim, then we said that Atzilus is Das Elyon, because it's Kilelakus, it's Mam Shelakus. But then we said on a higher hezbollah, when we got talking about the different levels in the ayin of the Yesha meeting, the ayin of the Yesha Nivra, and then we said that Atzilus was Beklal Das Takta. That because it was a mamutza, in order to bring about the whole inyan of Atzilus, that we said in if I'm not mistaken, near the end of we said it in one of the Mamarim, that its whole inyan was to be Beklal Das Takta. More generally speaking, since it's a market for the Etcha Misavas of the Yesh, therefore it's Beklal the inyan from Das Takta. I was a Das Elyon, there's a din from Keser, how there's Mudal from being a Mocher Klau to the Indian from Lamaila, in other words, of Koyach Samech Sheba Keser, Etzema Keser. Alright, so that's what we'll hold for this evening. And maybe on Tuesday, by Yom Shlishi, I hear that the Seder, they're going to close down the kitchen only on Tuesday evening. It might even be supper on Tuesday evening. Which is unusual. Usually they send everybody a few days before Tishbo. So there'll be more or less normal Seder until Tuesday evening.
Will we have, just Tuesday, will we have our shir or shir quality?
I'm not sure yet. We'll see. It'll depend a little bit on the Makabrim, also on the Mashpia Chaisis. I don't know. It depends. We'll see. Let's hope the war to be in the base of Midrash.